Hello there, you're watching All 24 News World News program with me, Karifa Zachary, and up next are the headlines. Algerian parliament sends a strong message of unity, rejecting hostile plans and emphasizing resilience. Lawmakers, meanwhile, are also set to vote on a historic law criminalizing colonialism to protect national memory. Coming up next, under UN guidance, Libya kicks off a structured dialogue aimed at breaking political deadlock and setting the stage for comprehensive elections after more than a decade of transitional phases. Also in our news, in Sudan, violence escalates as the rapid support forces attack hospitals and UN sites. The government calls for international accountability as the humanitarian crisis deepens. And in the occupied West Bank, Zionist raids leave martyrs and wounded, with ceasefire violations continuing in Gaza, while Palestinian resistance reaffirms its commitment to armed resistance against occupation and external control. The details are right up. Welcome back. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, Algeria's National Assembly, or the lower house of parliament, has condemned what it described as provocations by a lawless group, stressing the unity and solidarity of the Algerian people in the face of treason. Meeting on Sunday, the Assembly's bureau said the group is driven by illusions while reaffirming that national sovereignty remains essential to safeguarding the country's unity and stability. The Assembly added that strong national cohesion is Algeria's main source of strength, enabling the country to confront threats and move forward.
The Council's office reaffirms that national unity and the strong bonds between the members of the Algerian nation and their cohesion are a source of strength to repel calamities and achieve excellence. It denounces and condemns the displays perpetrated by lawless gangs dreamy and lost amidst a whirlwind of illusions and currents of imaginary obsessions.
In the same context, the Speaker of Algeria's National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, said on Sunday that recent maneuvers show the former colonial power's reliance on skeptics will only lead to further failure. Speaking at a bureau meeting marking the December 11th demonstrations, Boughali said that despite shifting tactics, the colonial power continues efforts to undermine national unity through deceptive slogans and false pretexts.
إن المناورات التي تصنع وتدار في مخابر ليست خفية.
The conspiracies hatched and plotted in secret are not hidden, and they will only strengthen our people's unity, cohesion and solidarity. They will only reinforce one truth, that the colonizer, no matter how he changes his tools and methods, remains a coward incapable of learning from history. His reliance on treacherous, subservient individuals will only lead him to further disappointment, regret and loss. For these attempts will only increase the resolve and determination of our united people in all their diversity to move forward on the path of national cohesion.
On a related note, Algeria's National People's Assembly has announced a plenary session on December 24th to vote on a proposed law criminalizing French colonialism. In a statement, the lower house said discussions will begin next Sunday with the presentation of the proposal, a preliminary report, and interventions by parliamentary group leaders. The text will then be submitted for a final vote during the December 24th session. And in another story, Algeria called for a comprehensive approach to strengthen cooperation in cultural, intellectual, religious, and scientific ties between nations. At the UN Alliance of Civilizations Forum in Riyadh, Secretary of State Sofiane Shaib emphasized empowering the initiative with mechanisms to uphold the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and other international instruments.
نتوجه بأصدق عبارات إن عالمنا أحوج لبلورة مقاربة شاملة.
Our world today is in dire need of a comprehensive approach rooted primarily in cooperation to strengthen intellectual, cultural, religious and scientific ties among peoples and nations. For Algeria, this approach is built on the following pillars. First, intensifying cooperation to support the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations initiative and grounding this important mechanism in the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other relevant international instruments. Second, promoting education and engaging youth to instill the values of respect, tolerance, solidarity and interfaith and intercultural dialogue while upholding the right to be different. Third and finally, involving the media and civil society in various international and national efforts to promote noble values, raise awareness about the dangers of distorting religious teachings and confront Islamophobia and hate speech.
Algeria's cabinet meeting, led by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, approved pension increases, 10% for retirees earning 20,000 dinars or less, and 5% for higher pensions, building on earlier minimum wage hikes. The cabinet meeting also reviewed the national e-commerce strategy, with the President of the Republic emphasizing digital security, streamlined procedures, and transparency. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, also ordered a halt to winter demolitions of illegal housing and called for better coordination to protect farmers from crop losses, and earlier signed the finance law for the upcoming year 2026. India's ambassador to Algeria, Swati Vijay Kulkarni, confirmed that Indian pharmaceutical company Tanki is interested in investing in Algeria. During a meeting with APID Director General Omar Rakash, they discussed strengthening economic cooperation in pharmaceuticals, drug manufacturing, and broader Indian investments, and reviewed plans for an Indian business delegation visit in January 2023. The opening session of a UN-facilitated structured dialogue began on Sunday in Libya's capital, Tripoli. UN Special Representative Hannah Tete said 124 Libyan figures are taking part in the first session, describing the move as an effort to broaden national participation and involve wider segments of society in the political process. She added that the dialogue offers an inclusive platform for shaping a national action plan and contributing to Libya's future.
Structured dialogue offers an inclusive platform for Libyans from all the walks of life to help shape the national action plan and the future of their country. I'm pleased to be here today with this diverse group of 124 committed Libyans, 81 men, 43 women, 13 young people, as well as representatives of different cultural and linguistics groups and persons with disabilities.
The head of the UN support mission in Libya said dialogue is a key part of the UN-backed roadmap endorsed on August 21st, providing a space for Libyan-led discussions to advance the political process.
Structured dialogue is a core part of the UN-facilitated roadmap presented to the Libyan Council and the Security Council on 21 August 2025. Our goal is a Libyan roadmap rooted in Libyan priorities. This dialogue reflects the majority of Libyans' call for a more inclusive political process. While the UN mission facilitates and supports it, the dialogue remains a space for Libyans to lead the conversation.
Similarly, the UN's Tete said the upcoming Libyan dialogue starting next January will focus on four main themes and aim to produce practical recommendations to prepare for elections, strengthen stability, and support discussions to conclude Libya's transitional period.
The dialogue will focus on four key pillars, with sessions over 4 to 6 months starting January 2026. It will cover governance, the economy, security, national reconciliation, and human rights, aiming to produce concrete recommendations on urgent policy issues and steps toward elections. It will also tackle political and legislative reforms and address the root causes of the conflict, ultimately shaping a unified national vision for stability. The process will follow clear timelines rise and give Libyans from all backgrounds the chance to discuss the country's current situation and future path in depth.
In the same context, the UN support mission in Libya praised municipal elections held in 9 eastern municipalities. In a Sunday statement, UNSMIL noted the calm, organized voting and an initial turnout of 69%, highlighting Libyans' continued engagement. The mission stressed respecting the electoral process and using legal channels for disputes, reaffirming its support for inclusive, credible, and transparent Libyan-led elections. In another regional development, the Polisario Front emphasized the need to stay prepared on all fronts, military, diplomatic, media, and cultural, to confront the Moroccan occupation. The statement came during an expanded meeting on Sunday chaired by Secretary General and Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali, which reviewed key issues and the international situation, including developments following UN Security Council Resolution 2797. Within the same scope, the Sahrawi Community and Polisario Front in Catalonia held a protest on Saturday against Moroccan occupation abuses of unarmed Sahrawi civilians. Demonstrators called for a UN mechanism to protect human rights, the release of Sahrawi political prisoners, and condemned EU agreements with Morocco that allow the exploitation of Sahrawi resources, demanding respect for their right to independence. Elsewhere, Moroccan human rights groups condemned prison sentences and fines against earthquake victims who challenged the removal of their tents. The National Coordination of Earthquake Victims denounced the arrests, while the Moroccan Association for Human Rights reported authorities threatened victims with sharp tools during demolitions before imposing arbitrary charges. Moving on to a different note, in Africa, 7 people were killed and 12 injured on Sunday in a rapid support forces attack on a military hospital in Deleng, southern Sudan. AFP agency cited medical sources saying the wounded included patients and companions. Deleng in South Kordofan remains under army control, but it is still besieged by the RSF. Sudan's rapid support forces attacked Kidugli, South Kordofan, for a second day with drone strikes targeting the city's eastern areas, heightening fears after last week's killing of around 120 civilians. RSF also bombed an aged truck, at Dakak, North Kordofan, injuring 3. Military sources said the attacks on supply trucks aimed to block food and medical aid to Al Ubaid, calling them serious violations of international humanitarian law. In the same context, the International Criminal Court said a Sudanese government delegation led by Attorney General Intisar Ahmed visited The Hague to discuss Sudan's situation and the ongoing cooperation with ICC investigations into Darfur crimes, highlighting Khartoum's commitment to international collaboration. To other topical development, 2 Palestinians, including a child, were killed by Zionist forces in the occupied West Bank. According to the Palestinian news agency, occupation forces shot and killed a young man in Ras Al Jura area of Al Khalil on Sunday. Separately, a child from the town of Al Harithiyah, west of Jenin, was also killed by Zionist fire between Saturday night and Sunday morning. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Prisoners Affairs Commission and Prisoners Club reported the death of Sakher Zalul, 26, from Bethlehem, inside Offer prison. The cause of the death is unknown but suspected to involve torture amid rising occupation violations against Palestinian prisoners. On Sunday as well, Zionist occupation forces also arrested 19 released prisoners during raids across Salfit, Nablus, and Al Khalil in the West Bank. Elsewhere in the Gaza Strip, occupation warplanes struck Rafah and Khan Yunis in southern Gaza on Sunday, hours after 6 Palestinians were killed and over 25 wounded in an attack on a civilian vehicle west of Gaza City. Palestinian medical sources reported heavy airstrikes hitting multiple sites and infrastructure in Rafah and the occupation-controlled areas of East Khan Yunis. Northern Rafah and southeastern Khan Yunis also saw intense gunfire from occupation military vehicles along the border.
This is not the first time the Zionist occupation has violated the ceasefire agreement. We call upon the mediators, especially the US administration, Qatar, Egypt and Turkey, to compel the occupation to abide by the ceasefire agreement. This agreement was signed by these countries, and today it has violated by the martyrdom of leaders from a Qassam brigade and the martyrdom of many civilians.
Meanwhile, Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya said the group's weapons are a legitimate right and emphasized openness to proposals that preserve them. In a televised address marking Hamas's 38th anniversary, he stressed that resistance and its weapons are protected under international law for occupied peoples and supported efforts toward an independent Palestinian state.
We affirm that the resistance and its weapons are a legitimate right guaranteed by international law to all peoples under occupation and linked to the establishment of the Palestinian state. We are open to considering any proposals that preserve this right while ensuring the establishment of an independent Palestinian state and the self-determination for our Palestinian people.
Hamas also rejected all external control over Palestinians and called for the immediate creation of a technocratic committee of independent Palestinians to govern Gaza.
The movement and the national factions remain committed to the agreement and affirm the rejection of all forms of guardianship over our people. It also affirms what was agreed upon with the Palestinian factions on the issues outlined in President Trump's vision to end the war on Gaza. The mission of the Peace Council is to oversee the implementation of the ceasefire agreement and to fund and supervise the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, 3 Lebanese citizens were killed and 1 wounded in Zionist airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The Ministry of Health said 2 were killed and another wounded in strikes targeting a car and a motorcycle in Bint Jbeil, Nabatea Governorate. A separate airstrike killed a municipal council member in Juwaya, Tyre District, South Lebanon. Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shaybani condemned an attack on a joint Syrian-U.S. patrol near Palmyra that killed an interpreter, 2 U.S. soldiers, and 2 Syrian security personnel. Syrian and U.S. officials emphasized their commitment to preventing an ISIS resurgence, while U.S. President Donald Trump warned of retaliation if ISIS targets U.S. forces again, calling the strike a dangerous assault on both nations' personnel.
You know how it happened. It was an ambush, terrible. We also have 3 wounded. They seem to be doing pretty well. But we mourn the loss. These are 3 great people. And it's just a terrible thing. Syria, by the way, was fighting along with us. The new president of Syria is, as they told me, and I'm not surprised, he's devastated by what happened. This was an ISIS attack on us and Syria, and again, we mourn the loss and we pray for them and their parents and their loved ones. Very, very sad. We will retaliate.
To another story in Europe, Ukrainian President Zelensky's updated peace proposals await a U.S. response amid escalating fighting and deepening political divisions in Europe. Here's Yasin Rikti.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is in Berlin awaiting a U.S. response to his revised peace proposals drafted with European leaders. Kiev says any settlement may require concessions, including a pause in NATO ambitions in exchange for strong Western security guarantees.
Ukrainian conditions from the very beginning, or maybe not conditions, but more correctly, Ukraine's desire was to join NATO, and these were real security guarantees. Some partners from the United States of America and Europe did not support this direction. I haven't received a reaction from the United States of America yet. I've heard a few messages through my negotiating team, but I'm getting all the signals, and I'll be ready for the dialogue, which will begin today. Today we have a Ukrainian-American Day in Berlin. Of course, I'll see German Chancellor Friedrich Merz separately, and probably in the evening. I'll also meet with some of our European leaders.
Over the weekend, Zelensky met with US envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner ahead of a European summit on Monday with Starmer, Macron and Merz to discuss Kyiv's 20-point plan. But Moscow has already warned against unacceptable clauses. Kremlin officials stressed that any agreement must be enforceable, urging binding guarantees to ensure Ukraine upholds its commitments.
We have made our position very clear, and we believe it was perfectly clear to the Americans. However, the contribution of the Ukrainians and the Europeans to the peace plan proposed by the United States is unlikely to be constructive, and that is the problem. I don't know what will happen on paper after these consultations, but it is unlikely to lead to a positive outcome.
Meanwhile, the fighting rages on. Ukraine reported drone strikes on Russian oil refineries, while Russia says it intercepted 290 Ukrainian drones overnight. Energy infrastructure across Ukraine has been hit hard, leaving hundreds of thousands without power after a week of sustained attacks. Tensions in Europe are also rising. The EU is divided over the use of frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine, with Hungary warning that aggressive measures could backfire.
EU's attempt to seize foreign Russian assets constitutes a blatant declaration of war by Brussels against Moscow. The attempt by some EU members to use around 210 billion euros of frozen Russian assets to cover Ukraine's financial needs is a tantamount to direct declaration of war. They must be vigilant, because if you allow them to take a small portion of your resources today, they will end up plundering the entire country tomorrow. This decision sets a dangerous precedent that will undermine the very foundations of legitimacy and the rule of law within the European Union.
NATO has also faced criticism from Moscow over warnings of potential escalation. In fact, the Kremlin called NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's comments irresponsible. On the diplomatic side, Zelensky insists that strong legal binding security guarantees from the US and European allies are essential to prevent another wave of Russian aggression, potentially substituting for Ukraine's NATO aspirations.
And that is why today bilateral security guarantees between Ukraine and the United States of America, namely Article 5 like guarantees from the United States of America for us, and security guarantees from European colleagues for us, as well as from other countries, Canada and Japan. These security guarantees for us are an opportunity to prevent yet another Russian aggression, and this is a compromise on our part.
With negotiations underway in Berlin, battlefield pressure mounting and European debates intensifying, hopes for settlement remain fragile, suspended between cautious optimism and deep mistrust.
And in another story, the Thailand-Cambodia border conflict has entered a second week, breaking a US-backed ceasefire and worsening the humanitarian crisis, with civilians bearing the brunt of the fighting. Here's Karim Mustafawi with the details.
The Thailand-Cambodia border conflict stretched into a second week on Sunday after renewed fighting collapsed a Washington-backed ceasefire. Thai authorities confirmed that Cambodian forces bombed several Thai provinces from Saturday night into early Sunday, while Cambodian officials insist that Thai troops continue to hit border provinces with heavy shelling. As the two nations keep trading blames for initiating the latest clashes, hundreds of displaced civilians are now sheltering in tents.
I want peace, and I would like a ceasefire to come into effect immediately, so I can return and continue my business, as I need income to pay my debts to local banks. Our family of 5 is staying together at this shelter. The food and living conditions here are quite good. We really want to go home. Even though it's comfortable here, we're worried about our house, our cattle and livestock, our pets, and the vegetables in our garden.
This ceasefire, reached in July, came after pressure from President Trump, who warned he would suspend trade privileges unless Thailand and Cambodia agreed to halt the fighting. Now, with clashes breaking out again, Trump is renewing that warning.
I just used tariffs 10 minutes ago, just before you came, to settle the new inflammation that took place with Thailand and Cambodia. I told them, if you have the war, not only am I going to break the trade deal we have, but I'm going to put tariffs on your countries.
It's worth noting that the clashes that erupted on December 7th left at least 25 people dead, including 14 Thai soldiers and 11 Cambodian civilians. The two countries have been contesting their 800 kilometers land border for more than a century. The border was drawn by French cartographers in 1907, when France was the colonial ruler in Cambodia.
And finally, it's time to catch up on more international news stories making headlines with Sofian Kinturi in the News in Brief.
French farmers blocked highway in southwest France with tractors, protesting government cattle disease policies and demanding compensation for losses. They also dumped manure near public buildings, opposing the mass killing of livestock, which they consider excessive. At least 12 people were killed and 16 wounded, including 2 police officers, in a shooting at Sydney's Bondi Beach. Video footage showed a bystander disarming the gunman, an act widely praised as heroic. Local media identified the man as Ahmed Al-Ahmed, 43, an Australian from a Muslim family living in Sydney. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, said talks are ongoing with Tehran and key international stakeholders, including the United States, European countries, Russia and China, aimed at reaching a sustainable and workable solution to manage Iran's nuclear program. Chileans voted on Sunday in the second round of presidential election, pitting ultra-conservative José Antonio Cast against left-wing candidate Jara, who both topped the first round held November 16th. Nearly 16 million voters were called to the polls in the mandatory vote. In the first round, the far-right Republican Party candidate finished second with 23.92% of the vote in Chile.
And with this, we reach the end of our news for tonight. To catch up on any part you missed or get the latest updates, you can always visit our social media platforms. I'm Kareem Zachary signing off. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, do take care.